How are you all doing tonight? My name is Bigbobbedboi and welcome to my SoD Phase 2 class overview / choosing assistant video. Just like I did for the launch of SoD, we're going to cover each class. This time, we will see what new important abilities and talents they get going to 40, their new runes, and what kind of style of play opens up now that you get all this shiny new shit. There's a lot to be excited for here, but we need a few small caveats. This is pre-release. Things are going to change, especially when it comes to damage numbers. Lone Wolf, for instance, was 25% damage before SoD released, then nerfed to 15%, and now seemingly buffed up to 30%. So while we have a solid idea how classes are going to play at 40, no one can give you accurate numbers on what kind of DPS people will be doing. This is also not focused on PvP. I'll make a few remarks on PvP, but I was originally going to do an entire version of this just focused on PvP. However, there's just not enough time to get that out before release anymore. And finally, the data mine stuff. I will be covering some data mine stuff, but not all of it, so there could be some spoilers. Hunter. This section might be a little more in-depth than the other classes since, well, I've got a lot of Hunter viewers, and Hunter is the only class with a confirmed to-exist deity that watches over all of us. Level 25 was a weird time for Hunter. We had a lot of nerfs, a few justified, a few incredibly stupid, and some of the worst runes in the game. In spite of all that, level 25 Hunter was extremely enjoyable to play, and yet level 40 is going to be miles better. Level 40 will likely be the best bracket for Hunter. Let's look at the important abilities we gain. 26 Rapid Fire, 28 Frost Trap, 30 Feign Death, 32 Flare, 36 Viper Sting, and 40 Aspect of the Pack. All fantastic abilities, but nothing changes Hunter play as fundamentally as Feign Death. BM gets a whole host of pet damage buffing talents, all pet buffing talents. There's really nothing that buffs the Hunter. Ferocity, Bestial Discipline, Frenzy, plus a massive DPS cooldown on a short cooldown with Bestial Wrath, and even a stun with Intimidate. Marksman gets its crit modifier maxed out with Mortal Shots, a few flat damage modifiers, but most importantly, Scattershot. That's extremely impactful in PvP, and True Shot Aura. This is only going to be 45 AP, but that's still something. And it's a group buff to stack with Hunter likely already doing the King's buff via Aspect of the Lion. Survival ends up in a bit of a different place here. The deep survival talents are actually pretty impactful, mainly Lightning Reflexes. 15% increased agility is just really damn good. But survival for range would likely only make sense at 60 when we can sub-spec into Marksman for the important talents there like Mortal Shots and Aim Shot. However, it remains to be seen how well Lightning Reflexes will stack with Lion and potentially some other runes. And while not super impactful for most PvE, Serve can now grab Counterattack and Wyvern Sting. The runes. This is actually really tricky. So Blizz showed off belt and boot runes in their preview. However, Helm runes and wrist runes were also data mined. While Head seems to think we will get wrist, boot, and belt runes next phase, I have no idea how they came to that conclusion. Some classes had no Helm runes data mined, but that's also true for Bracer runes, whereas every class has had at least 3 belt and 3 boot runes data mined. My assumption based on the information we have right now is that we will get the boot and belt runes like Blizzard had previewed. One point that really leads me to believe this is the case is Hammer of Wrath. There's a Bracer rune for Hammer of Wrath. You don't learn Hammer of Wrath until 44. That would have Helm and Bracer runes coming in at 50, leaving more runes to come in at level 60. We just don't know, but that's the assumption I'm going to go with here. So for Hunter belt runes, we get Steady Shot. Although seemingly a very weak version of it. There are a lot of unknowns with this. We do not know if this is the TVC style version that you need to weave with your shots, or a later style version that does not interrupt your auto shots, but it's probably the TBC style, and it looks like it will be 1.5 second cast. Exposed Weakness makes its return, working with melee and range crits. Melee Specialist. Oh yes, this is it. Melee Hunter is finally going to arrive. Before it was just chilling in the lobby, now it's at reception. This radically changes how Melee Hunter plays. There's almost no reason to jump out and shoot. You are a Melee Hunter. But this leads into our boot runes with Dual Wield Specialization. What is this shit? Hunter just finished up at reception and is now bossing in the penthouse. Melee went from not so great to possibly one of the best specs, and is now dual wielding. Raptor Strike is already a hard-hitting ability. With these 2 runes, Raptor Strike will be crunching extremely hard, and so will Flanking Strike, which this now actually makes Flanking Strike really good. Look forward to many videos on Melee Hunter in the future. Invigoration. This is mainly aimed at PM since it requires crits. I guess the idea is to combo this with Steady Shot so you actually have the mana to spam Steady Shot, but this is probably the most boring rune we're getting. Trap Launcher, another absolute banger. And combat traps from ranged, with Fire and Frost now on separate cooldowns. This opens up so much for Hunter. You can now throw traps from range as part of your rotation. PvP wise, this is actually really scary, especially for big engagements. Hunters can now trap launch frost traps from 40 yards, and that trap could have entrapment. Oh my bad. Both traps could have entrapment. Can you imagine that on the AV bridge, or just any choke point? Damn. Alright, let's add all this up. What does Hunter look like at level 40? BM Hunter looks mostly unchanged. Your pet will be doing a lot more damage, and you have Bestial Wrath for a good DPS cooldown. The only likely rotational change is now you will have Steady Shot, but it's possible Exposed Weakness wins out there anyway. And in that case, your rotation is basically unchanged. Marksman will be doing a lot more damage. There are some absolute key talents Marksman was not able to get before, like Mortal Shots. And now you have True Shot Aura to further buff your group. So Melee is really going to like to have you. Although rune-wise, Marksman doesn't gain a ton. Marksman will likely take Exposed Weakness, not Steady, but it depends on how that version of Steady plays out. With Trap Launcher or Invig, depending on circumstance, usually Trap. Melee, though, changes drastically. You're now going to be dual-wielding most of the time. And with the weird dual-wield spec rune, you have to use the same weapon type. So 2 axes, 2 swords, at least in PvE. But damage-wise and rotation-wise, this has massively improved. And you're going to be hitting Raptor Strike so much you might wear that key out. And Raptor Strike is going to hit really goddamn hard. The only thing Melee doesn't really gain here is the ranged in-combat traps, as that will be exclusive with dual wield. So you're going to have to use FD to drop traps. I should also say there's a few other ways Hunter can play that could be extremely good. If the 30% Lone Wolf goes through, Lone Wolf builds will be an actual thing, and some of them will be, well, actually really good. And it's possible for, let's say, BM, dropping Steady Shot and picking Melee spec. This wouldn't even be Melee weaving like before. It would be a BM and range and Melee hybrid. Some crazy shit happening in P2 or Hunter. And a small quick note on unique Hunter solo opportunities, just because I've been thinking about this a lot. Hunter could already pretty much do ZF solo runs. It's now way easier, and they'll probably be doable at level 40. In Season of Mastery, they nerfed the loot from the Zombos and ZF, but they also nerfed like the DM tribute loot. If you check on the live server, the DM loot has not been nerfed. It's the full vendor value. So I would assume ZF was also not nerfed in SoD, but we can't confirm that. However, even outside of ZF, I'm expecting a lot of extremely cool Hunter solo opportunities to open up in this phase. Let me know if there's like a specific boss or farm you'd like to see attempted at 40. I am definitely down to work on some of those. And that is Phase 2 Hunter. If I had to equate Phase 2 Hunter to a Pokemon, it would be Doublade. Rogue. P1 Rogue was really good. It did great damage. It had a fantastic set of runes and probably the coolest rune quest in the game, the one for Deadly Rue, where you sneak into SFK solo and pickpocket some mobs. That was really fun. But it was missing a lot of pivotal abilities. Does it get those in Phase 2? Yes. Oh god, yes it does. 26 Cheap Shot, 30 Kidney Shot, 34 Blind, 40 Safe Fall. Not a lot of abilities, but a nice set of abilities. Although as you can probably tell, this is some god tier shit for PvP. For PvE, yeah, it's not nearly as impactful, but that's what the runes are for, right? Talents. You thought I was going to talk about the runes next, didn't you? Ass gets a few cool things like Cold Blood, Seal Fate, Improved Poisons, and Vigor. Alright, Vigor isn't that great. And Sub also has a few nice things deep in the tree like Hemo, Deadliness, Prep, and Pre-Med. But the real winner, at least in PvE, is going to be Combat. Dual Wield spec, Weapon spec, Blade Flurry, and Adrenaline Rush. That's an incredible set of talents. Fights in SoD have been very short, and Nomura probably won't change that. Combat's cooldowns are just going to excel in these short fights. Although Rogue is very unique compared to other classes in that it has a lot of extremely good talents low in the trees, so it's very possible you won't go all the way down any tree. Okay, now we can talk about the runes. Belt. Poisoned Knife. Wait, is this just a ranged Shiv? I hate Shiv. Shuriken Toss. This is a bit more interesting. It only does 25% of attack power as damage, but it can strike 5 targets. It's not a good AoE, but it does give rogues at least some AoE, and it's nice to at least have a little cleave as a tank, just so mobs don't go flying after the healer from one renew. But really, Shadow Step is the big one. One of the best abilities Rogue has ever received. While absolutely bonkers in PvP, it does have some dope uses in PvE as well. Boots. Alright, this is a bit weird. Rolling with the punches. Every time you dodge or parry, you gain 6% increased HP, stacking up to 5 times. Okay, this isn't the worst tank rune I've ever seen, but it's kind of a weird way to add some EHP. Could be nice if the duration is long, but I was unable to find out what it was even after digging around Wowhead. Waylay. So you actually use this on waylaid supplies, and they become waylaid supplies, which give more. So attack speed and move speed debuff after ambush or backstab, this is not bad, but unless the attack speed debuff stacks with everything like T-clap, I think most people are going to take Master of Subtlety, 10% damage for attacks while stealth, and 6 seconds after breaking stealth. Very solid, we've seen this talent many times. So where does that leave P2 Rogue? Actually in a pretty good place. So none of these runes are like super massive for DPS. That's probably intentional. Rogue DPS was already really good, and the talents they get are also really, really good. So Rogue DPS is going to be just fine. As far as what playstyles are going to be good, it's actually a bit difficult to say. A lot of mobs in Nomer could be immune to bleed or poison, as mechanicals usually are, and there's a lot of elementals in there too. However, Baron Aquinas in BFD was not immune to nature damage, and Water Ellies usually are. So they could make exceptions in Nomer, the same as they did for Aquinas. If that's the case, Saber/Combat is still going to wreck house. If not the case, daggers will probably be the play. I would assume combat daggers. However, there was also a data mined version of Mutilate that only costs 40 energy. This could massively change things for Rogue. 40 energy for 2 combo points is pretty interesting. But wait, maybe the mobs are immune to poison. Yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty here about which is going to end up best. But at least there's a lot of options. If I had to equate P2 Rogue to a Pokemon, it would be Kecleon, because he can learn Shadow Sneak, and that's like Shadow Step. Shaman. Shaman had an interesting time at level 25. Tank ended up being way better than I think just about anyone expected. It had its ups and downs in PvP, and it had its downs in PvE. But level 40 Shaman, oh yeah. Abilities. 26, Magma Totem, Mana Spring Totem. 30, Wind Fury, Grounding Totem, Reincarnation, Astral Recall. 32, Wind Fury Totem, Chain Lightning. 40, Chain Heal. Yeah, that's some good stuff. And there's stuff there for each spec. The talents though, Elemental gets some massive stuff. People would often respect Elemental at level 40 just to level as Elemental because of how strong some of these talents are. Elemental Mastery, Elemental Fury, and also Lightning Mastery. Reducing the cast time on LB is really, really nice. It just felt so slow to use LB at 25. Resto gets Nature's Swiftness and Manatide Totem. Enhance gets Flurry, Storm Strike. It might be the most boring one. There are some good talents here, but a lot of them are just passives. Even this version of Storm Strike is a 20-second cooldown. But the runes. Belt, Fire Nova. So this is the version that emits a Fire Nova from your existing Fire Totem, instead of dropping a Fire Nova Totem. Maelstrom Weapon, oh yes, this is what we wanted. After 5 stacks, this will let you instantly cast LB, Chain Lightning, LHW, HW, Chain Heal, and even Lava Burst. Currently, there's no attack power into spell power, talent, or rune, but even with no spell power, an auto crit Lava Burst still hits pretty damn hard. Power Surge, Instant Lava Burst, Chain Lightning, or Chain Heal, and resets the cooldown on Lava Burst and Chain Lightning. That is really crazy. The only issue here is it's kind of a low chance, 5% chance every time Flame Shock deals damage. I don't know, 5% just feels a bit low to me. But there's definitely some potential for this to be really, really wild. Imagine dropping an Elemental Mastery, Lava Burst, and Chain Lightning just for this to proc, and you immediately drop another instant Lava Burst that auto crits. Ouch. Boots. Decoy Totem. This is extremely cool. It's like Grounding Totem, but for melee and ranged attacks instead of spells. But it also basically has Blessing of Freedom built in. Nice. This part is worded a bit weird though. Grants the target immunity. Who do you target with a totem? Currently the cooldown is 20 seconds, that's not bad. Ancestral Awakening. Crit heals with HW and LHW, so not Chain Heal. Also heal the lowest HP target in your party. Okay. Spirit of the Alpha, a reverse salve, but only one target. I'm curious if you can use this on yourself if you're tanking though. It could be good. Shaman is also lucky enough to get a chest rune with two-handed mastery, which is great. I never liked dual wield for enhance. So how is all of this going to play out? Well, for Ellie, it's way, way better. Two things that dicked Ellie before were spell ranks, and now Ellie's spell ranks are so much better. 38 you get a new LB, and 40 you get a new Chain Lightning and a new Flame Shock. Damn, that is nice. The LB cast time, that is also fixed. One thing that wasn't fixed, the Flame Shock duration. There's nothing to help with that. It's more of an issue in PvP than PvE, but it's still a bit annoying. But now you have all your main spells, good ranks of them, and some interesting gameplay with Power Surge. Enhance is also a lot better, and there's some really interesting possibilities with Rockbiter now. Classic Shaman didn't have the option to dual wield with Rockbiter on an offhand before, and two-hand is back in play with the new rune. The only real negative is, the new runes didn't give you a lot of new buttons to press, but it did bring in Maelstrom for the instant casts. Honestly, I'm a lot more pumped for Enhance than I expected to be. Resto is again a lot better, but it's kind of in a strange place. You have a lot of your amazing buffs now, but most importantly you have Chain Heal, and Chain Heal will interact with a lot of your runes. If there's enough raid damage, Shaman can absolutely excel with Chain Heal. If it's like BFD and we have basically no damage to heal, well, Shaman still excels because it brings a lot of good buffs, unless you've already got someone else doing those. It's going to be good, but it will kind of depend on what kind of damage we have to deal with. It's probably going to be like BFD again, where there's almost nothing to heal, and in those situations, Shaman is probably more fun to play than Paladin or Priest, about the same as Druid. So what Pokemon would Shaman be? Definitely Rotom, because it rhymes with Sham. Sham Rotom. And it uses a bunch of elements. Warrior. In Phase 1, warriors had to mess shit up like they always do. Will that happen again in Phase 2? Yeah, probably. Abilities. Warrior gets a literal doom stack of abilities this bracket. 26, Challenging Shout. 28, Shield Wall. 30, Slam, Zerker Stance, Intercept. 32, Zerker Rage. 36, Whirlwind. 38, Pummel. 40. Actually, weirdly, nothing comes at 40 other than Plate and new ranks. But that is a lot of good stuff, so their talents gotta be weak, right? Oh no. Talents. Arms gets Sweeping Strikes, a Weapon Spec, and Mortal Strike. Fury also makes out great. All points in Enrage, Dual Wield Spec, Death Wish, Flurry, and Bloodthirst. For protection, it's mainly Shield Slam, but Concussive Blow has some good uses. Okay, so good talents, good new skills. The runes can't be good too, right? Belt. Blood Surge. 30% chance for an instant slam after HS, Bloodthirst, or Whirlwind. Pretty nice, not incredible. But it will be interesting to see how that compares to Precise Timing. Another instant slam rune. Slam is always instant, but 6-second cooldown. To me, these are way too similar. Yes, one is proc based and also works with a talent ability. One is just always instant, but I do think it's kind of lame to have two runes affect the same ability in the same way. I wouldn't be surprised if one of these was an old version and ends up different on live. The other belt rune is Focused Rage, reduces all offensive rage ability rage costs by 3. Boots, Enraged Regeneration, fantastic. 30% HP hot, just requires an enrage effect. Looks like this one is going to be 3-minute cooldown, and interestingly it still references Gladiator stance. Intervene, we knew this was coming, it's pretty fun to have. Rallying Cry, 15% max HP buff on a cooldown. I never really liked this ability. Yeah, it can come in clutch and you can save yourself or others with it, but So these runes are kind of boring, not gonna lie. But the plus side is the runes for the other data mine slots that we'll get later actually look extremely good. So where does that slot Warrior in Phase 2? It was at the top DPS slot before, and it's still going to be really good. You could just supplant level 25 Tank Warrior to level 40 and it'd be fine. It didn't get anything mind-blowing for tank here. It's still really good tank, and Shield Slam is fun, Intervene is really fun, especially with Warbringer. But then the big question, Fury or Arms, Dual Wield or Two-Hand? Fury is still going to be extremely good. You got a lot of important talents like Bloodthirst and at least one kind of nice rune with Blood Surge. Arms is actually in a similar position, but Arms could see a bit of a hit if most mobs in Nomer are immune to bleeds. We don't know if that'll be the case. Final thing to keep in mind, even though we're just mainly covering new stuff in this video, a lot of Warrior's previous runes greatly benefit from things you gain going to 40, honestly probably more than any other class. So while it might look like they're falling behind here, not so much. What Pokemon is SoD Warrior? Registeel, because Registeel lives in ruins and warriors like to ruin things for everyone else. Druid. Druid had a pretty solid go of it at level 25. Unless you were Feral, then it was amazing. The new abilities. 26 Dash, oh that finally. Abolish Poison. 30 Travel Form, that's the good stuff. Tranquility. 32 Ferocious Bite, Ravage. 36 Pounce, Frenzied Regen. 40 Hurricane, Innervate, and Dire Bear Form. Yeah, pretty solid stuff. The talents. Balance can now max out Vengeance and of course Moonkin form, plus quite a few other passive damage buffs. Feral gets two extremely important things, Fairy Fire Feral and Aspect of the Pack. Of course, Omen was super strong for Feral this phase. If that ends up being the case for P2 as well, then, well, you might not be getting Pack. For Resto, honestly, nothing incredible. A lot of good passives, Swift Mend and Nature's Swiftness. These are both good, however, they're going to be pretty limited in use compared to Classic. So much of your healing is currently done by WG, and you can already cook up instant healing touches by Wrath spamming. So, the runes. The belt runes being Berserk, Eclipse, and Nourish. Berserk is a good DPS cooldown, and it also adds in a nice cleave effect. Looks like it'll be a 3-minute cooldown. Pretty good. Eclipse, though, this is actually huge, gameplay-wise. Assuming these numbers pan out, this plus your balanced talents mean there's now a reason to use Starfire, and it's actually going to be doing some damage. My biggest gripe with balance right now is Star Surge is the only button I'm interested in pressing. Spamming Wrath feels worse than Wanding. And Nourish. This is not Nourish. Okay, it's kind of Nourish. It's like the Wrath version, I think. But when I think of Nourish, this is the one I think of where it places your hots on the target. Maybe this wouldn't work now because Life Bloom is a rune, I'm not sure. So this will be nice to have, especially for like tank healing. This wasn't the Nourish I really wanted. Boots. Dream State, damage spell crits give 50% mana. Good for Boomkin, obviously. Boomkin will use some mana now since he'll be using Starfire. But this is really good for Healing Druid. Healing Druid is already going to be running free Wraths to fish for instant healing touch, but now you can also fish for mana regen. Feral Tank gets Survival Instincts for a Last Stand effect. Okay. Cats get Tiger's Fury turned into a very different version of Tiger's Fury that also restores 60 energy. I don't know, that's pretty cool. Druid at 40, it's looking pretty good. Balance is dramatically improved by Starfire talents and Eclipse. I really like Balance Druid, but it was just kind of boring at 25. However, I'm super pumped to play it at 40. Tank Druid is in, okay, kind of a weird place. All tanks are really. Druid can tank just fine. There's no problems here. But tanks were basically not necessary in BFD. And it was a lot easier to have a warrior 2-handed tank or Ret throw on Righteous Fury. If mobs and Nomer actually cause damage and tanks are necessary, Druid will be good. And it does fill an interesting role of being able to bring Wild Strikes, Leader of the Pack, and Fairy Fire as a tank, since you probably won't need to spec Omen as a tank. Feral DPS is still excellent. Both rooms are nice, new talents are nice, and Wind Fury is still one of, if not the most sought after buff. And no other classes pick that up on Alliance, so Ally Feral Druid will still have literally zero trouble finding groups. The only potential issue is bleeds. So traditionally, Cat DPS uses bleeds. However, in SoD, Omen and Mangle spam did a lot of damage. So if no more mobs end up immune to bleeds, that's not going to ruin Cat DPS, but it will probably force you into the Omen and Mangle spec route, instead of going all the way down Feral for Leader of the Pack. Although it's possible even if the mobs aren't immune to bleed that Omen ends up being better anyway. Healing Druid is going to be mostly more of the same. Tank healing will improve a lot with Nourish, but you're probably going to end up in a similar hybrid playstyle to P1, where most of your healing is Wild Growth, and you're doing a lot of Wrath. So what Pokemon is a Druid? I don't know. Hoot hoot? Why not? I'm getting kind of tired of this joke, but I'm going to see it through, damn it. Priest. Priest had a phenomenal time at level 25, probably the best healer and a great leveler. Unless you wanted to play Shadow, I guess that was also a phenomenal time. A phenomenally shit time. New abilities. 30, Prayer of Healing, Mind Control, Shadow Prote. 32, Abolish Disease. 34, Levitate. 40, Gheal. Few good things here, but you notice there's not a lot of things. Yeah, the Priest kit was pretty heavily front-loaded. However, it does look like all Priests are going to get Shadow Fiend. It will be one of the dungeon skill books. Now, I didn't talk too much about those for other classes because honestly, most of them aren't that important. They're mostly quality of life improvements like mana reduction and duration extension for buffs. The talents though, Priest gets some big shit. Disc Priest gets Divine Spirit and Power Infusion. This is actually huge. It's not the version of Divine Spirit that gives a bit of spell power, but Power Infusion is going to be extremely sought after for any caster trying to parse. Holy gets Spirit of Redemption and Spiritual Guidance, and shit, Lightwell. Shadow just drops a fat nutsack right on the table with its big talents. Shadow Weaving, Darkness, Silence, and Shadow Form, but seemingly a buffed version of Shadow Form. Here it says reduces mana cost of all shadow spells by 0%. Elsewhere it said 50. So I'm guessing this plus Shadow Fiend is supposed to fix Shadow Priest's mana problems, and they're still kind of playing around with exactly what percentage it will reduce shadow spell cost. That is possibly the best talents anyone is picking up this phase. Definitely a fat nutsack's worth. But how about them new runes? Belt. Empowered Renew, so a small buff to Renew similar to how Druids get the multi-haunting. But also Renew ticks the instant it's applied, which is actually pretty nice. Not a huge amount of healing, but some instant healing when you can't shield is kind of nice to have. Renewed Hope. Some spells have 10% crit on targets that have been shielded. Very boring. But Mind Spike. This is super goddamn interesting. The current data mine version has no cooldown, 1.5 second cast. I'm not sure if that's going to be how it is when it goes live. It could, and it could be a low damage spell where you just hit it to get your crit up before a Mind Blast. What makes this really interesting to me though is its Shadow Frost damage. So it should get the effect bonuses for Shadow and Frost spells, like Winter's Chill. It seems to me like they're trying to create more synergy among casters, similar to how there is currently a synergy among melee. And you'll see this trend continue as we look at some other casters. Boots. Dispersion, even more mana regen for Shadow. Obviously you can't attack while dispersed, so you don't want to use it in the middle of a boss fight if you can help it. But it's also a huge damage reduction cooldown, very nice. Pain Sup. Okay, it's Pain Sup, same as always. Fantastic ability with a lot of uses. 40% damage reduction, but also 65% dispel resistance. Finally, Spirit of the Redeemer. I am conflicted here. This is amazing. It just lets you turn on Spirit of Redemption instead of it happening when you die. Although it does require the 21-point Holy Talent. But it says 30 seconds. Yeah, this sounds incredibly OP. You can just sit there for 30 seconds and heal non-stop without any worry. You avoid all mechanics, all damage, and all spells are free. How would that not be broken in both PvE and PvP? So where does all this put level 40 Priest? Priest is going to remain a fantastic healer, and you can roll Disc or Holy depending on the situations. Although if Spirit of Redemption goes through as it is currently, Holy is going to be insane. Shadow should be out of the meme tier. It's getting a lot to fix its mana issues, it's getting interesting new spells, it's getting a literal ass load of shadow damage. I don't think this is going to be enough to shoot them to the top of the meters, but it's light years ahead of where it was in 25. So what Pokemon is Priest most like? Easy. Wait, what? I was going to say Mismagius, but it's Ghost, not Dark. I guess Hoopa. It's Psychic and Dark, and it wears rings. Priests wear rings, so yeah, there you go. Paladin. The Paladin. I know a lot of people forgot about them, but Paladin did indeed exist in Phase 1, and they'll probably exist in Phase 2. New abilities. 26, Salvation. 30, Divine Intervention, Seal of Light. 34, Divine Shield. 38, Seal of Wisdom. 40, Blessing of Light. Cleanse is 42. Ouch. On the talents front though, actually I think Holy improves the most. Holy Shock can be cool. Divine Favor is nice, but getting 5 in Illumination is the big one. All your mana returned if the heal crits. This has a huge effect on healing Paladin. Protection. Okay, it remains to be seen how often you'll go full protection, but Blessing of Sanctuary and Holy Shield are both nice, and Reckoning, well, it's Reckoning. I'm not going to talk about Reckoning and Kazakh. I am tired as shit of hearing about that story. Yeah, it was awesome, but it's been 15 years, dog. Enough. Ret gets Sanctity's Aura, Vengeance, and Repentance. The runes. Belt, Enlightened Judgments, 30-yard range increase to your judgments, and all spells gain 17% hit chance. This is really cool. Sheath of Light. I kind of expected this to end up on Shamans first, but this is turning your AP into spell power after you've done melee damage, but also causes your spell crits to gain a 60% hot. This is really interesting and not bad at all. In fact, this is one of the better runes anybody is getting. Infusion of Light is where shit gets a little weird. 20% damage bonus to Holy Shock and Holy Shock crits, reset the cooldown on Holy Shock, and Exorcism. Alright, I am intrigued. Boots, Guarded by the Light, 5% mana per 3 seconds after doing melee, but heals are reduced by 50%. Art of War, melee criticals reset the cooldown on Holy Shock and Exorcism. Alright, another Holy Shock reset. And Sacred Shield, fantastic. This is probably the best rune any healer gets this phase, except for maybe Spirit of Redemption. Not only does this give a damage shield, it causes Flash of Light to have 50% extra crit and a 100% hot. Damn, that is good. Sacred Shield only lasts 30 seconds, but yeah, there's no cooldown on this version, so it's always up. Where does that put Paladin at level 40? Well, let's do the good first. Remember the size of Shadow Priest nuts? Healing Paladin nuts might have reached planetary status at this point. With Illumination and Sacred Shield, Paladin healing and mana is on point. Paladin does still lack AoE healing, sure, but the only real issue is, do we really need all this healing? Like I've said before, BFD was really easy to heal. If Nomer is also easy to heal, does it really matter that Paladin is so good at healing? Tank Paladin, pretty similar to other tank specs. It's going to be just fine, and like before, you'll have some variance in the specs you can run as a tank Paladin. But getting the spell hit and mana regen, this could be really nice and really improve the flow of tank Paladin, especially in dungeons, since you likely will never have to drink anymore. Ret Paladin, to be honest, I'm a little let down here. Ret didn't gain much. There's no new buttons here for Ret to press other than, yeah, there really isn't. New runes plus your old runes mean you have the opportunity for a lot more exos, and exos that hit pretty hard. That is very cool, but I would have liked to have seen some more new abilities. Plus, Ret wasn't exactly topping the meters at 25. I think in most cases it was the lowest melee DPS, except for maybe Enhance. And unless I'm missing something, I don't see any talents or runes they're getting that will keep them competitive with other melee. I'm not dooming on Ret, but it is a letdown for me personally. These new runes do possibly bring in a new playstyle with a shock spec. Or is it an exo spec? Because the runes kind of bundle them together. You have a rune for 20% Holy Shock damage and crits reset it, while also refunding the mana on exo and Holy Shock crits. The other one has melee crits reset the cooldown on Holy Shock and exo. That's gotta be taken, because this version of Holy Shock has the 30-second cooldown. But wait, does this mean you're a fully holy melee spec? It just says melee crits reset the cooldown. So am I running a fast melee weapon and Crusader to fish for crits to spam Holy Shocks? This is one of those weird specs that could end up going either way. It could be complete shit or a pretty fun spec. Obviously, we haven't had the chance to play this, so I don't really want to just speculate in theorycraft forever, but I'm very interested in this. It could be really fun. Paladin Pokemon is, well, okay, it's not a Pokemon, but it's like one, and Paladin starts with Pal, so Paladin is literally Pal World, just all of it. Warlock. Lock had a good time at 25, and you know what? It's going to have a good time at 40. New abilities, 26, Curse of Tongues, 28, Banish, 30, Fell Hunter, Hellfire, Subjugate Demon, 32, Curse of the Elements, 40, Howl of Terror. That's a pretty good kit. The new talents. Af gets, well, mainly Siphon Life, but I'm not sure if we'll see any Deep Affliction at this point. Demo does pretty good with Demonic Sacrifice and Soul Link. But Destro, Ruin. Why is Ruin 1 point? Every other class has to put multiple points into their crit bonus talent. A flat 10% fire from Emberstorm and Conflagrate, but runes, actually they're pretty cool. So Belt, you have Grimoire of Synergy. I love the flavor of this. Damage you or your pet does has a 5% chance to increase damage done by the other by 5%. Numbers wise, maybe this is not super impactful, but I really like the idea of it a lot. Invocation, making it so you don't have to worry about dot clipping so much. This is pretty cool. But Shadowflame, fire and shadow crits increase fire and shadow damage by 10%. Well, because yeah, why not? I mean, locks weren't doing enough fire damage already. Boots, Dance of the Wicked. Interesting tank rune here, giving you and your pet dodge chance equal to your spell crit, and each crit you do returns 2% mana to you and the pet. Demonic Knowledge, spell damage equal to 10% of your pet's stam and int. Weird, but okay. I guess you're gonna want Fort and AI on your pet now. Shadowflame though, damn, just stole that shit right from Nefarian. An AoE cone with direct damage and a dot, and you can eat the dot with Conflag instead of Immolate. Weirdly though, the damage here seems broken up. It's not Shadowflame damage. So the initial damage is shadow and the dot is fire. So it will not get all bonuses from fire damage and shadow damage. So where does that leave Warlock? In a good place. But it was already in a good place. Fire Destro is still going to wreck, especially now that all fire mages will stack the fire debuff for you. And you have Curse of the Elements to help them out as well, on top of being a good target for power infusions. And you have good spell ranks. And Incinerate is a rune, so it scales automatically. All good stuff. Tank Warlock, honestly, I don't have a lot to say. It's fine, it didn't gain anything that interesting from runes, though having Soul Link on a tank sounds pretty wild. But is that survivability really going to be necessary? Weirdly, a lot of the amazing stuff data mined for Lock was for the other rune slots. I know a lot of people were pumped for those things like Immolation Aura, but it's likely those are going to be level 50. However, Warlock does at least get the best out of the dungeon skill books, with Portal of Summoning making it a lot easier to do summons, and Soul Harvesting giving you some extra soul shards, Pokemon Warlock, well, it would be Darkrai, but now Fire Warlock is the shit, so Chandelure. Yeah, that's perfect. Mage. Level 25 Mage was a Travis Fowler style fun time. As long as you weren't playing Frost, that was near traumatizing. Not at 40 though. New abilities: 26 Cone of Cold, 30 Teleport Darn or TB, 34 Mage Armor, 40 Portals. Okay, that is actually not a lot of impactful abilities compared to other classes, but it will get better. The talents. Arcane gets Presence of Mind and Arcane Power. Fire gets Improved Scorch. You could get 1 point here before, but having all three is a really big deal. Blast Wave and Combustion, also a big deal. Frost has all 5 points in Shatter. That is so important, and it has a lot of downstream effects for Frost Mage. Ice Block, Winter's Chill, and Ice Barrier. So that's quite a lot of good stuff. Them runes though. Okay, Mage runes are a bit of an anomaly here. Mage has 4 belt runes data mined. A few other classes had 4 belt runes too, like Hunter, but one of those was moved to a dungeon skill book. So something's wrong. Either every class has secret runes that were not data mineable, or one of these mage runes isn't going to make it live. Or Mage just gets an extra rune because Blizz knows I want to play Mage this phase, and it was their way of apologizing to me. Which I accept, by the way. I don't have any way of knowing, but I'm going to talk about all these mage runes, assuming we're getting all of them. So for belt, that is Frost Fire Bolt, Spell Frost Bolt, Missile Barrage, and Hot Streak. God damn. So, Frost Fire Bolt looks pretty much the same as always, and it's nice to have, but it might not be that great at this level. Once we have the talent points to dip into Fire and Frost, it'll probably be really good. Similar with Spell Frost Bolt. This is like Frost Fire Bolt, but it's Arcane and Frost instead of Fire and Frost. Like I mentioned in the Priest section, it looks like they're trying to create more caster synergy. And one way of doing that is letting a lot of spells double dip on bonuses by making it 2 types, and I am all for it. Missile Barrage gives a proc to A-Blast, Fireball, and Frostbolt to make quick arcane missiles kind of cool. But the best one for me is Hot Streak. Instant cast Pyroblast, oh hell yeah. Just like before, it needs non-dot crits 2 in a row, and then you get an instant pyro. I love it. One of my favorite mage abilities ever. Boots, Brain Freeze, bringing back another nice frost talent. Any chill effects have a 15% chance to give an instant cast free fireball, but this also works with Spell Frost Bolt or Frostfire Bolt. Chronostatic Preservation, this one they showed off in that preview. Tooltip is a little confusing, not gonna lie. What I gather is this is a 2-second casted heal, but then it doesn't actually heal. You store it and you can instantly cast the heal later. I could be reading it wrong though. Last boot rune is just Spell Power. Critical strike damage bonus of all spells increased by 50%. Yeah, flat damage bonuses are usually boring, but that is a pretty hefty one for a rune. And that is some good shit. I am really pumped for Mage. So there was also some Mage tuning that was data mined. Again, we don't know if it will go live, but it probably will. Doesn't really affect Mage DPS, but it does greatly affect soloing and Mage healing. We don't know if all of this will go live, but yeah, that could have a pretty noticeable effect. But anyway, Frost is finally looking better. You've got instant Frostfire Bolts. Fingers of Frost procs will actually feel good now that you've maxed out Shatter, so it's going to be good PvE DPS now, right? Nah, probably not. Yeah, unfortunately, as awesome as this stuff is, I don't see it improving PvE DPS to the point that it's going to be, you know, really high up on the meters. But it is going to be an insane amount of fun in PvP. Fire was already great, and it just got even better. Literally, there are no downsides to these changes. Instant Pyroblasts, oh yeah. Possibly 50% more crit damage, and you've got Combustion? Yes. Yes, thank you. It's hard to say if Fire will outcompete Lock for top caster DPS, but it's still going to be really competitive with phenomenal AoE, although you do get a little dicked on spell ranks. Fireball and Pyroblast are 36. Arcane is lucky in that its main spell damage ability is on a rune with Arcane Blast, so you don't get screwed on ranks too bad. And Arcane does get some massive talents here. I'm not sure how the Missile Barrage talent will play out though. It sounds alright, but I'd really like to see it in action. Arcane looks like it'll be good, but I'm kind of in wait and see mode based on that new rune. Now, Healing Mage, well, assuming those temporal beacon changes are not affecting us too much, Healing Mage should be fine. But if those changes are as bad as some people think they are, that's a little bit disappointing. And there's also 4 belt runes for Mage, and one isn't dedicated to the healer. That's kind of weak. The chronostatic rune also seems kind of boring. Slightly disappointed for healing Mage. Of course, you don't even need to ask. Mage is obviously Mr. Rhyme. Look at that idiot. He's got a face on his round-ass stomach. So dumb. Ooh, that's a long-ass video. I had to bring the Pokemon jokes back. I used to do a ton of Pokemon jokes, but I was super disappointed with Shining Pearl, Brilliant Diamond, and I didn't really like Scarlet Violet either, so I kind of stopped doing the Pokemon jokes. It was time to bring them back. And if you had to equate me to a Pokemon, what is it? I gotta know. And finally, come on, how was that intro? Doing a little parody of other channels' intros was a long-standing tradition on the channel, but the last few I did were not good. Like, I just did not do a good job. This one, I am pretty happy with. What do you think? Tell me you liked it, because I know you liked this video. I am going hard over here. We are so close to 20k subs. Come on, let's make it happen with this video. Videos like this are a massive undertaking. I'd say for about a week, all I did was work on this video. And for some reason, OBS kept crashing, so I had to re-record all this audio multiple times. So if you did enjoy the video, hit that like button, subscribe button, Bigbobbedboi Productions button, all that other shit. I appreciate each and every one I get. Like, for real, I actually do. If you want to support the channel, click that join button and check it out. It is an amazing way to support the channel and helps me out massively. But that's going to be all for this one. I really appreciate you all watching, and I will see you all for the next one.